Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Roll Call. I'm your host, Joseph Giacalone. And what is Roll Call? Roll Call is when the cops get up in the morning, they get dressed in their uniforms, and they appear in front of either the sergeant or the lieutenant, and they get their assignments for the day. And the pop culture reference, of course, is Hill Street Blues when he's going, be careful out there. So that's Roll Call. Today's Roll Call, we have a returning guest that I'm excited about, Lauren Conlin. You might know her from PopCrimeTV. She's all over the also all over the channels, giving her expert opinion on different things. Lauren, thank you and for coming back.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I was very anxious to discuss this with you.
Yeah, this case has taken on a new leg, of course, and we're going to discuss the testimony that happened the other day. But it kind of got lost in the shuffle. So we're going to talk about Proctor. But there was a police officer that testified before him. Is it Barros?
Yep, Nick Barros.
So we want to talk about him because there was an interesting little tidbit, at least one that was coming out of that kind of got glossed over because of all the Proctor stuff. But don't worry, folks, we're going to get into the Proctor stuff. Yeah. So tell us what you had, we were talking offline, Lauren, and you had mentioned something to me. Could you tell the audience what you had observed and picked up?
Yeah, so I just wanted to point out to you that officer Nick Barros, he's a Dighton police officer. He got on the stand. He was not cross-examined, which I thought was a power move after this. He simply got up there and he stated when he saw Karen Reed's taillight in the evening, I believe it was right around the time that it was either going to the Sally Port or right before. Either way, he stated that it was cracked and a piece was missing, like a small piece. It wasn't anything like thousands of pieces, a giant piece. He just said, yeah, it was kind of cracked and a small piece was missing. And a lot of people were like, wait, what? Okay, this is a lot different than what we've heard previously from Buchanan. And obviously we hadn't heard from Proctor at this point. But I think many people were like, that's it, game over. We have a cop here who's not involved at all, who's not Canton PD, not Mass State Police, not Boston PD. He's Dighton. So a lot of people assumed that he was truthful.
Well, and that's a big deal, right? And I think that kind of got lost in the whole shuffle of, these tweets, these text messages that Proctor put out. Because, I mean, for me, that is something that you say to yourself, well, wait a minute, right? So now he's not part of the Canton Police Department, which is a whole other issue, right? So you have an outsider now coming in and saying this. And I think the defense should have seized upon that one for sure, but I don't know. I don't understand what that was.
There's nothing else to do. I feel like he kind of said it, and that's why I personally thought. And again, I'm not a trial expert. I consider myself more of a trial junkie, and obviously a reporter, podcaster. But I thought that was a straight up power move because what more are they going to say? It kind of, I feel like it might have shown the jury like that's all we need for you to hear is that an outside officer just saw that it was cracked and a piece was missing. I was actually trying to find a tweet for you that I did with more detail, just so I could read it to you, but I'll find it later. But yeah, it's funny. All this stuff exits my brain, all the little details. That's why I want to get you the exact time and the exact, just so it can, you can see that it really did. It was completely different from what everybody else said.
Yeah, but here's the problem that I have with that, right? So yes, I'm not a trial expert. I've been on trials. I've testified in trials.
More so.
However, So, but here's the problem I have with this. It kind of got glossed over. No one's talking about it. It just kind of because once the Proctor thing hit, it was scorched earth as far as many people were concerned.
Right. No, you're right. And I think that people were talking about it, and then split second, he said, "I'd like to call Michael Proctor to the stand," and everybody was like, "Okay, So you're right. You're absolutely
you can actually,
right.
You can actually hear the air get sucked out of the room when he said that, because even I wasn't prepared for that because it was like we were waiting for that moment.
Yep. You're right. No, you're right. You're so right.
So the question always comes down to is, it's not if you're a pro Karen Reed or free Karen Reed person or you're an anti Karen Reed person. How does this sit with the jury? That's the bottom line.
Yep. I agree. And something, I don't know if it was you who said this, it might've been you, but there seems to be this, I'm saying this misogynist culture there, right? Between these text messages that you see. And maybe that's not super far-fetched, as people have said, oh, it's just cops being cops, coworkers being coworkers. Sure, but that's highly inappropriate, when you're investigating the death of one of your own, number one. Number two, was it you that stated there are 10 female jurors?
Yes. 10 female
Okay.
jurors.
And again, as a female, I'm not naive at all. Listen, I've heard some nasty shit said. Okay. I've heard men talk very, very badly. Some of this language, even me, and I'm from New Hampshire. I feel like but Joe, listening to him talk about a woman's leaky balloon knot, I'm sorry to say that right here, but I was just like, this is real. This is not real. There's no way. But yeah.
So well, we're gonna get into some of those questionable things.
Okay.
Yeah. No, but it's just something to think about. I just wanted to. Elf had just gifted 1 membership to the channel. Thank you very much, Elf. And Not That Mickey just gifted 5 memberships. So welcome to all those new members. Thank you very much, Not That Mickey. But yeah, here is the major problem, right? So we've heard the testimony of Barrows, which I thought was pretty damning for the defense. Excuse me, for the prosecutor.
Yes.
But I'm still questioning what the hell Lolly is done with this case. The way he set it up, I've rarely. I don't think I've ever seen a case where you have your lead investigator saved for almost last. I mean.
Well, I have. I mean, I had somebody on the other day who was a former homicide prosecutor who said, he is the affiant of the case. He's supposed to come. He said, I would save him for last, most definitely, so he can come and tie everything together. However, this is different because of his past and his background. And I want to point out also, Joe, that when he was up there, they did not want to make him the lead investigator. He referred to himself, and he was referred to as the caseworker. So it was obvious they were trying to distance that based on what they knew was to come.
Well, the rose, by any other name, right, is still a rose, whatever that Shakespeare quote is.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right. You're right.
Yeah, you can call it whatever you want. You're not fooling anybody in that courtroom. You're not fooling the jury either. I mean, they know exactly. Everyone knows this guy's Proctor's name. I don't care if they've been, if they've been living in a hole somewhere. Everyone knows up there anyway. I mean, you go outside of this area, then it's not really, listen, this is a nationwide case for sure, but.
Yep.
The average person doesn't know who Trooper Proctor is.
Yes,
but I think they learned after the other day. I think it's been kind of viral. I think a lot of people have.
It's totally viral. I mean, people are sending it to me, and they're like, "Wait, I think I've seen you post about this," And I'm like, "Yeah, no, I have posted about it. This is the one." So, fun. Can you ask them where they're from?
Steel Guitar. Would you like to share where from New Hampshire are you from? We'll take a look at that.
Okay.
But what
oh wait, hold on, I have the tweet. I found it. Sorry.
Okay.
So Barrows testified when he saw it in Bill Reed, Karen's parents' driveway around 4 p.m. It was cracked, not shattered. He said it was cracked and a piece was missing. There you go. That was before it was towed to the Sally Port. And I mean, yeah, that was, you're right. That was huge. And we didn't spend nearly enough time processing that.
We didn't. And like I said, that's why I wanted to start off with that because, and you had brought that to my attention when we were doing the tweet stuff back and forth. I thought it was, one of the most important aspects of what we heard that day.
You are absolutely right.
Now, one of the problems that I have with Proctor, besides, he's doing it, like Scott, who's he's a retired NYPD guy, says he would have been at least been put on modified if he was the NYPD, and he wasn't. He's already he's actively investigating homicides. Yeah, and that's part of the problem, right? So we come from a very a department, believe it or not, whatever it says. I mean, they are very strict with a lot of things, and they will modify it, which means they take you off the street in a matter of seconds for something. Oh God, yeah. Oh no, they would. Yeah, they listen. If this was me, and those were my text messages written up there, by the time I would have gotten off that thing, I would have been not only stripped of duties, I would have been transferred somewhere so far away from where I lived that it wouldn't have even been funny.
I mean that sounds right, though. If you're right? I mean, would you kind of agree with that if you were caught doing something like that and talking about someone that hasn't been proven guilty yet, but is your suspect? That seems
Well, here's the problem, right? So, and this is what a lot of people don't understand. I'll use that word. As a case investigator, you have to remain objectionable. You gotta be, you can
Yeah.
say it. Looks, if you think that your victim, or you think that your complainant is crazy, I mean, listen,
Yeah.
that's all part of policing. Believe me, you deal with people who are crazy all day long. I don't have an issue with that stuff, but the other stuff, I mean, it's just it's unacceptable. I had posted that one tweet about that it was juvenile, junior high school kind of stuff, and that he's gonna bring everybody down. Listen, those all the supervisors, they're gonna have to answer for all that. The one who liked it, the message is gonna have to answer.
That was Yuri. That was Buchanan. His direct. I mean, oh
And
yeah.
then he even said something about, like, when they were talking about women, he even used the word like, yeah, like the chief likes, or something like that.
No, he
Something.
said like something about the bag. Is she in the bag or something? Like so and so says.
Yeah, like the chief says,
Yeah.
he mentions chief. So
Yeah.
it's not the chief, I guess, of it's of Massachusetts State Police. But let me tell you something. That investigation is going to grow, because as the police department, you can't afford to have this kind of national exposure about what's going on.
Right, right. No, totally agree. And I did see some back and forth on one of your tweets that, again, I say this a lot. And I'm not trying to be political, but it's a whataboutism, and that doesn't make sense. So, and again, this is not me being political, but someone says something about Donald Trump, and then someone says, well, what about Hunter Biden? Well, we've got these texts from Proctor, and someone says, well, what about Turtle Boy doing this? Or what about Karen Reed's text about this?
Yeah,
well,
I saw that.
these are civilians. Number one, they're not investigating a murder of one of their own. This is completely different. I mean, yes, sure, it can all be shitty. We're not talking about people's moral compass, and we're not talking about that. We're talking about something completely different here. So I just was kind of getting tired of the whataboutisms, because it's very obvious.
I'm glad you brought it up, because I had responded back that, as an agent of the state, you can't do this, or can't get caught doing this. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
I don't care what Karen Reed has on her cell phone. I don't care, as far as like the what about stuff.
Right.
Because
right.
listen, Lolly hasn't brought any of that out yet, and I don't know if he's going to. How does he get that in there?
I feel like they're going to play the voice messages where she said, I fucking hate you, or whatever these were. I don't know when. Again, I thought that possibly the only, I don't even want to say the smartest thing he's done, because I don't know how you say this, but the one thing that I actually agreed with to an extent was him getting ahead of these text messages with Proctor. I was like, finally, you're going to actually address something and hopefully make the jury, hopefully for you, make the jury trust you, because so far, I would think we have no clue where you're going with this case. You haven't talked about a conspiracy. You haven't, addressed this. You just act like it doesn't exist when your witnesses are up there claiming it does exist. So I thought this was the first strategic move that he should have done. However, from what I'm learning, again, this is prosecution 101. This is what you're supposed to do, and he just hasn't done it yet.
Yes, and I've been calling him out since day one, when he came out there and put us all to sleep with his opening statements.
That was,
and then
yep.
I don't know. Yep, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I'm interrupting you.
I just wanted to call out. I don't know, James. Thank you very much. He said there should be a directed verdict in this case, but Proctor is just the icing on the top. Yeah, unfortunately, Proctor has now become the actual symbol of this case, instead of John O'Keefe, who was the man who died. That people keep on forgetting about this. The people on the Karen Reed side and the people on the anti-Karen Reed side, they seem to forget that the guy in the middle is dead. And I've said this 100 times. I always tell my students this too. In a war between ideologies, it's the people in the middle that get killed. And this is the exact answer for that, because here you have this man who's died, and you know what? Lauren, I'm not convinced that we're ever going to find out what exactly happened to him.
I said that too. I've literally said that so many times. And it is interesting you bring that up, because people will come down on us right now for speaking about Proctor, and they'll say, just move on. You're missing the whole point here. Who cares what he did? We need to get back to the truth. What happened to John? Well, this all relates to what happened to John, because how are we really supposed to know when you have someone who's not objective in something like this? And I want to point out just two other things. So he had texted pretty much the day that John passed away. He was texting his fellow, maybe it was his fellow officers or his friends. I can't recall exactly who it was, but he basically said he had overwhelming evidence to charge Karen Reed. And if you've got overwhelming evidence and you didn't seal a crime scene off, but you're returning to that crime scene days, weeks, months later and still collecting evidence, what did you actually have? What did you have to start that was so overwhelming besides the question, could I have hit him? And a small piece of taillight. That's or you know, what we think is a small piece of taillight to start, because we didn't actually find anything until way later that night.
Right.
So
and you bring up another great point. But here's another point with that. We have failed to see any consistency on anything about this taillight. There hasn't been one thing that's been consistent. Is it a piece? Is it a million pieces? Where was it? I forgot the name of the one guy from the special team, right? Who basically, when they asked him about like how many feet this was, oh, I didn't measure it. Like, you didn't measure it? Like, you don't know how many feet this was from it? I think Lauren froze up on us. But it's the issue that comes down to is that you had this, I think it was the sergeant who said, hey, I don't know exactly how many feet from the driveway this was. Guys, when the crime scene unit gets done, everything has to be measured out. One thing I haven't seen them ask for is a sketch. Now, you have a rough sketch that's done at the scene. You have what's called a rough sketch done. Where is it? I'm going to see if here we go. Hang on a second. You're back.
You jumped out too. That was so weird. Did you feel yourself jump out, or was that just me?
I don't know. You froze up on my end. I was still talking. I don't know if
that's funny. Okay.
No, so what I was saying is, yes, it says, I don't know, James, but the super says, we did, the McCabe's happened to them, the taillight that rode the truck to the shop, plus the SRA guys said it was mostly intact. Yes, I mean, this is what we're talking about. It hasn't been, to me, consistent, right? You tell them when it's shattered, you got pictures of shattered all over the snow, and then all of a sudden you got somebody say there's a piece missing. I mean, guys, that's a problem.
Joe, and let me ask you this, because I'm with my parents who are trying to explain this to them, and they're asking legitimate questions. And my dad's just like, so was there blood found on the taillight? Was there DNA found on it? And I'm like, well, we haven't really gotten there yet, which is also interesting. I'm like, but there was a hair that was found. But let me explain to you, this hair, they could not test it for mitochondrial DNA inside their lab, so they had to send it out. But this hair went from Canton to Dighton to the Sally. It's like, what? This is so crazy. So I don't even know what that has to do with anything at this point.
Yeah. And Dewey says Canton should have been talking about Officer O'Keefe. They made Karen Reed a distraction. Exactly. Yeah. Dewey. I mean, this is what, I think when we had you on last week, Lauren, we said the same thing. Like, there's a man that died in this, right? So he's also a Boston police officer, and everyone seems to have forgotten about that, right? So we don't even call him Officer O'Keefe when they mention it, right? They don't even mention his name. It's really weird. I don't find that.
Yeah, and you can tell me this, but like, would you? I mean, the way they're talking about this investigation, you do forget that it's one of their own. It's a brother in blue, and from the text messages with their friends saying he's the guy, all the way to these people being like, oh, the homeowner is going to get shit, and then he's like, nope, he's a Boston cop. They're not once did they just say, man, poor, like, I what a good guy. What it's bizarre.
Strange. It's very strange. Yeah. And when we either both of us froze up or not, I was talking about the one sergeant and who didn't know about measurements, about where the crime scene pieces were found. When I think it was Jackson asked him like how many feet it was, and he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, well, what was the measurement? And he's like, I didn't measure it. Now here's where I have yet to see. Yeah, here's where I've yet to see the defense, like, and I think it's because they might not have somebody. When you do crime scene stuff, you have to do what's called a rough sketch. And the rough sketch is a drawing that's made by the case investigator at the scene, not after the fact, at the scene. and he or she draws all the diagrams. It's not like, listen, we're not talking about a Picasso thing. We're talking about rough sketch, right? So stick figures, where the house is, how many feet. I mean, this is what you're supposed, where the compass direction north is. That all should have been done. Now, if I was on the defense team, I would ask, where is the rough sketch? Because that would play a huge role in the crime scene pickup of everything, where things were located, where things were. And it gives the audience a general idea about where things are. Now, it does exist, and maybe it doesn't help the defense. That's why they didn't ask for it. But at this point, I would have said, this is becoming a vital part of it, because we know that Seraph didn't secure the scene.
Yeah.
We know that the Proctor doesn't secure the scene. We know that this other guy, I forgot his name, I'm sorry, who did the measurements after the fact, who brought the snow blowers and the rakes.
Oh, yeah. I'm blanking on that too. Shoot. Okay, I'll find it.
But we know who we're talking about, right? He brings the rakes and all that. He's supposed to be part of the special squad that does this. He doesn't do the rough sketch. I mean, nobody's done the rough sketch. And where about the final sketch? Where's this? What we call the smooth sketch, which is the one that's created.
So we're assuming these weren't done at all, or else they would have been brought forth. Because you just said, well, maybe the defense didn't ask for it because it didn't help. But if that's the case, then wouldn't you think that the prosecution would present this and be like, look, we did this?
Well, that's my point.
And I'm very confused, because any police officer, law enforcement that I've spoken to, when you have a fatality and you believe that it involves a vehicle, no matter when it is, you're supposed to do an accident reconstruction. Am I right? Especially because Mass State Police, they have a special unit for that. So
yeah, they all do. Yes.
Right. So, and they didn't do that. And yet somehow you've got overwhelming evidence to charge someone with murder too.
Well, yeah. I mean, listen, I've been on the record from the beginning. That is definitely the wrong charge. It was overcharging for sure. If anything, you're dealing with the DWI aspect or whatever they call it in Massachusetts, vehicular manslaughter or whatever it is. Yeah.
I think manslaughter was on the table, and then they heard the text messages where she said, I fucking hate you, all that stuff. And then they upped the charge. So, yeah.
So not that Mickey said, just within the little while of the stream, I'm going to be reasonable doubt I wouldn't be able to find Karen Reed guilty. Let's see if this changes. Yeah, not that Mickey. This when we're discussing this too, we're trying to discuss this not from what Joe thinks or what Lauren thinks. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Lauren.
Yeah.
But it's like how this sits with the jury. Mm-hmm. And I'm just trying to give you a little bit insight about the investigative aspect of where there's been failures, but I think there are more failures that we are unaware of, starting with the sketches and everything else, because it is an important aspect. Because once you do your reconstruction, which they never do, everything has to be done. Now, the whole thing with the shoes, right? I've seen lots of accidents where people have been hit with cars and they lose their shoes. Mm-hmm. I mean, they get knocked out of their shoes. It happens quite often, if not, I won't say all the time, because I never say never, never say always, but it happens much of the time.
Yeah.
So I don't find that as an unusual aspect that that he was missing a shoe at the time.
I didn't either.
But, folks, there are basic things that the police have to do in order to make sure that they have the scene documented properly, because this is where the whole case hinges on.
Yeah. And, I want to point out, just from working on this and covering this on my podcast, I my specialty is I don't know everything. I look to experts like you, Joe. Obviously, you've been on my show, where I just want to ask questions and learn. And every prosecutor I've spoken to has been like, look, part of the failure is Lally, because you have a simple case here. The simplest explanation is, look, she hit him with her car and he died. And that's that. Instead, you've got this guy coming up there saying hundreds of names, calling hundreds of witnesses that don't need to be called, completely complicating this. And it's completely gotten lost. And by the way, I'm from Bedford, but I did go to Manchester West High. I don't know if you also went there, or you went to Central Memorial or Trinity. West is, I drove by, just a side note, and there was plywood on the door, and my husband was like, where's the new West? I was like, no, this is West. It's very ghetto. It's not. Yeah. So I'm like, this is how West always was. Yep.
I've been to New Hampshire. It was nice. It was when I was retiring from the police department, we went up to New Hampshire to look because of the tax implications.
Yes, exactly.
Was it Northampton by the beach area down there?
Yes, it's beautiful. It's Hampton Beach, but I mean, Manchester, New Hampshire is Adam Montgomery, unfortunately. So we've got some sketchy characters here.
But you know what changed my mind about New Hampshire?
What?
We went to a diner, right? We went to go get something to eat, and then the waitress was very nice. And I said to her, I said, "When does the snow start?" Oh, she says, "Oh, by Halloween, we usually get about a foot of snow." I was like, "I'm out.
Yep.
I'm out."
No, you're right. We come trick or treating here with my kids, and it's snowing. Literally, it's so funny you said that. I'm always like, "Dude, this sucks. Like, this sucks."
Yeah, I'm out.
Yeah, but that's really funny. Man, all the way.
So,
oh, you went to Trinity. Oh, that's so cool. What? Well, I'm 03, but I guess I just dated myself.
03 years.
Yeah.
03. I already had 10 years in the police department by the time you were in high school.
Good. I feel better. I feel better
there
then.
You go.
But anyway,
so, yeah. Let's get back into this. So there are some other glaring things that I have yet to see come out in this case. Now, apparently, there might be like 20 more people at least on the witness list that still have to come forward.
I think 30 actually
30.
From what, but again, maybe he won't use all of them. I can only hope that this is it. You've got Proctor. Maybe he is the affiant here. And oh no, they're definitely going to call the medical examiner, I feel like. But we can.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I mean,
we should get to that because I want to ask you, or can I just jump into this?
Go right ahead.
Okay, so let's go to Proctor's text messages. If we could just go there.
Sure.
So you see these text messages where he is almost coming down on, or his fellow officers are coming down on him, being like, well, why didn't you push the motor vehicle accident, harder, whatever. Well, I've always been under the impression, like, yes, Emmy works for the state. I know that cops generally want to be on the same term, I guess, or the same thinking as they are in terms of manner of death. And it would make your job, Joe, a lot easier if you were on the same wavelength as the medical examiner. So I don't know, is that super far-fetched for them to be pushing that sort of on her, or is that kind of not a big deal? I don't know.
Okay.
Like, what do you think?
It's a very big deal, and I'm glad you brought this up. And yeah, so Lauren and I haven't discussed what we were going to talk about, other than I wanted her to remind me about Barros because I forgot his name.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is an important aspect of it. I'm glad you brought it up because the medical examiner doesn't work for the police department, and the police department doesn't work for the medical examiner. And the way it's supposed to work is that they're supposed to be independent of each other so that you don't have this collusion on cases. That's the way it's supposed to go. Now, this is the way it goes in New York City, and I know that it goes this way in Connecticut because the Connecticut ME was his name is Jimmy Gill, Dr. Jimmy Gill. He was a big time guy in New York City, and he went over there. So all of that kind of thing goes out there. So it remains separate. And the reason why is because you don't want to be influenced. The job of the medical examiner, I'm not a medical examiner, but I have dealt with many autopsies, and I have a lot of friends that are medical examiners, and they'll tell you all the time. My job is to tell the police what I think happened to this person. What is the cause of death and what is the manner of death, and that's it. And when the manner of death comes back as undetermined, which it did in this case.
Yes.
Right? And I have mentioned this before in other streams, that the undetermined classification and the manner of death means that it gets kicked back to the police department for further investigation. It's incumbent upon the police department now to prove that this is either a natural accident, suicide, or homicide. That's their job. Mm-hmm. And in many jurisdictions, the way it's supposed to work is that over a certain period of time, that undetermined then gets classified as a homicide against them. Because if you can't prove it, it goes by what the worst part of it is.
Yeah.
So it's incumbent that the police department actually takes this really seriously because it goes as a strike against them. Mm-hmm. Which brings up to a point. Why are you bringing a homicide charge on a case that's undetermined at this point? And I thought that was kind of jumping the gun a little bit. You have the toxicology reports, right? They knew that she was allegedly drunk, right? They're looking at the estimate says like nearly three times the state limit, right?
I mean, that was a big, big.
Right. Well, I mean, listen, it's an estimate. It's a math formula, this and that. And listen, the prosecution has to be careful, like trying to poo-poo any of these things too, because it affects all their cases afterwards.
Yes,
so
totally.
They got a really big problem. So the issue that comes down to is that whole text message kind of also got lost in all the other bad words and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's interpreted, and I've because I interpret it that way too, as almost bullying. You're trying to bully the medical examiner to change the manner of death, and that should never happen, right? We always had an awesome working relationship, and I've been told a lot of times, Joe, I don't know, it's undetermined. You have to figure it out now, and that's just the way it goes. Am I happy about having,
No. Right,
no,
right.
but
I know. That's what I was thinking. Like, they don't want to deal with that. They're like, oh, like, yeah.
And think about the consequences now of you fighting this individual. You think that the ME is going to be willing to hear you out on the next case?
Nope.
And here's another big procedural breakdown. See, now you got me started.
I'm glad.
Yeah,
this is really
now
important.
You got me started.
This is important.
The way it's supposed to go in a homicide or any death investigation, when you have the autopsy, the case investigator is supposed to be present at the autopsy, and it usually happens about 9 a.m. the next day. Proctor testified he wasn't there.
You're right.
He wasn't there. Now, how do you have a case investigator who is not? And listen, I understand that there could be situations where the case investigator is doing something else in regarding the case. That's understandable. So
totally.
You send a suitable replacement. That supervisor sends a suitable replacement to go watch it. But that suitable replacement, Lauren, has to be a 150% up on the case, because they have to be able to answer the questions, including, now the MEs will tell you, Joe, I want you to bring photos. I want you to bring the sketches. I want you to bring the reports. Don't bring any of the evidence with you, because now you contaminate things, right? Like, don't bring the piece of glass with you. Don't do that, because now you're introducing this in there. But because those things, when you're prepared as the investigator or the supervisor in this case, you are giving the medical examiner an opportunity to make the manner of death more accurate and make them feel better about it.
Yes.
And that's how you can avoid an undetermined classification, by you, the investigation, you, the police, providing the required information for them to make a good decision based on what they have seen with the autopsy, what you have stated, when you're interviewing them, and now what they also hear about as the physical evidence. Hear about. I said not see, because you can bring photos. It's like it's really a missed opportunity that I think that once again got glossed over in the thing. But guys, that's a huge procedural issue, right? So I would have asked Proctor, why weren't you at the autopsy? And if he says, listen, I was busy, I was interviewing people, I was doing it, that's fine. But the person they sent, he or she would be on the stand too. Tell us what you did at the medical examiner's office.
I'm so glad I asked you this, because I had asked an attorney about this, and he was under the same mindset as you, but however, he was an attorney, so I didn't necessarily take it as factual or that, but I really thought, just because everybody worked for the state, that this was more common than it was. But I'm so glad now that I know that this is so wrong. That should not happen that way. And even after they were joking about this, I believe some of the officers said, well, if I would have been in charge, the manner of death would have been, they made a joke, like undetermined, and then something even more confusing, basically, like if I was in charge. So they were essentially saying, well, if it wasn't you, then I could have gotten a homicide charge out of this,
Well, that's what they were inferring by calling him a rookie. This is a rookie mistake, that he wasn't able to convince the medical examiner. I can tell you something right now.
Bad.
You're not convincing the medical examiner of anything, right? He or she, I think it's a she in this case, but
I
he
think
or she
it is too.
Yeah, so she's a medical doctor who has now gone on for even more training to be a forensic pathologist on top of that.
Yeah.
And that's why medical examiners, forensic pathologists are so rare, because it's not just being a doctor. It goes well beyond that. And you think you're going to be able to bully her? You're out of your mind. You're out of your mind.
No, you're so right. And is she going to also be the one to release like a toxicology report on the stand and tell us about John? And because I've been curious about that too. I'm curious will it be accurate based on, his body being there for 4 hours? The BAC level, probably not. I would think. But
well, they have there's a formula based on the
Yeah.
estimated time. First of all, there's
Right.
going to, everything got screwed up in this case. The estimated time of death or the postmortem interval because of the cold. It
Right.
slows everything down, so it
Oh.
becomes very difficult. So there are some ways that they can try to accurately time, and that's with the vitreous humor. That's with the eye, taking out the eye thing, because when you die, the potassium levels jump in your eyes, and it's one of the most accurate ways to determine this. But there's
Oh.
if also too, if they're saying that he was beaten and strangled and held, one thing I would want to know from the autopsy, and this is something that I'm going to key in on, was what they call petechial hemorrhaging. That's these little, like on the bottom of the lips, you get these little pinpoint dots, or in the eyes, if
Yeah.
somebody was holding them and choking them from behind while they were beating him, right? These are the
Yeah.
things that would show up in the the postmortem interval and the autopsy. So I'm going to be looking for things like that.
Right. And what about just resistance marks or signs that he fought back? Or I mean,
he's a big dude.
Right. But don't we already know that they didn't actually swab his arm? So that was another point of I don't want to say point of contention, but when they had the forensic pathologist or scientist on a few weeks ago, and we learned that there was pig DNA found on his clothes, it wasn't from his arm. So why would they not swab his arm as well? I don't quite understand that.
There's a lot of things I don't understand. Unfortunately, Laura, I don't have an answer for that. I don't have an answer, and I don't have an answer for a lot of things, because, I was a supervisor in the police department an awfully long time.
Yeah.
3/4 of my career I spent as a supervisor. And as I watched this stuff, I always joke. I said I would pull my hair out if I had it, because there should have been a supervisor at the scene of the initial call that came out, making sure that the scene was secured. There should have been a detective supervisor making sure that all this stuff. Now, I know they say, well, you got, I'm not going to butcher this guy's name, Bukunik, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
I'm going to avoid the other interpretation, right?
It's okay.
But the other issue it comes down to is that if you have supervisors that don't want to be supervisors, well, then they need to go back out and write speeding tickets on the highway, as far as I'm concerned. And do what the troopers do. I'm sorry, and I really don't care. I really don't care. I mean, people say, "Oh, Joe, you're so pro police," and I'm like, "Yeah, I guess you haven't been watching, because this has been an absolute abysmal case from beginning to end in the investigation. That is like they're going to be writing textbooks about this case, about what not to do."
You're so right. And again, just going back to the obvious, when you tell somebody about this, like my dad, it really made me think, why have we not seen any blood on the taillight? Why has there been no blood scraped off the tail? It's just strange. If we had that, wouldn't that be kind of like case closed if there's blood spatter, John's blood all over the right? I don't get that. And also, I thought about this. I don't drive often. I live in Manhattan, but I did kind of back out of my parents' driveway. I'm kind of practicing, and I'm like, man, I think if I hit a 6-foot man, it would take a lot for my taillight to be cracked in pieces. It would take something extremely hard. Like it would take me to back up so hard and so fast for a body to crack it, and then for no one to hear, not one person to hear a 5,000-pound truck hit a man. I'm like, I'm confused. I got a lot of questions.
Right. Well, that actually then pleads into the, the Free Carrie group, that this is all conspiracy, that no one heard anything or saw anything.
But I'm not even saying that, though.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I'm not saying that, because I also think it sounds crazy for an 18-year-old kid to be beating up. I don't get that either. So I guess it's like, can you believe both? Like you know what I mean? Can you believe that maybe she didn't hit him, but you don't believe in the conspiracy? I don't know. I guess that's where I'm at.
Lauren, if you told me that there was a pink elephant in the lobby right now, I'd be like, okay, let's go down and see it. I mean, that's basically where I am with this case. And listen, out of all the cases that I've ever either been a part of or have now watched after this, getting involved in this true crime, I call it an arena, because it's like the Coliseum at sometimes, especially in this case. It's like the Coliseum where you're just fighting everybody for no reason. The issue that comes down to is, I have no clarity on what I really think happened. And if I'm confused, so is the jury. And that's the way I look at it.
Yeah. It's funny. I've spoken to people on both sides when I say both sides, I want to say I heard from somebody that the jury actually seems to like the prosecution, but then I've heard from more people that they're rolling their eyes and they're horrified at some of this stuff. So I'm kind of like, I'm not there. I don't really know
Yeah, and I'll take all that with a grain of salt too.
Yeah,
especially from
exactly.
user 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it is what it is. So Drew actually has a good question. It says, at what moment do you think Proctor said to himself about the text messages, "Oh, I'm screwed"? So this is something that we really haven't gotten into. Right now, we're about 40 minutes into this. We have 770 people watching this live. Yeah, that's pretty big.
Yeah.
The issue that comes down to, Drew, is I think once he got the subpoena for his phone. Now, this is a personal phone. This isn't a work phone, which I thought, in the initial stages, that this was a work phone. They have work phone text messages, and now this is his personal phone where he's doing all this stuff. It becomes another issue for me. Why are you talking about a criminal investigation to other people, sending something through an unsecured method of doing things? It's also another bad idea. And also, an issue for protocol and the like. I mean,
yeah. It's yesterday was listen, I knew that we were going to see something, Joe, or not yesterday. I'm sorry, the day before. I knew something was going to come out. I was not expecting that. Like, I don't know about you, but I was just like, I was jumping up and down. I had nobody to like shout. I think I was texting you. I was like, "Oh my God, are you watching this? I can't even comprehend this." When Bev is like, "Are those your words, Trooper Proctor?" And then she made him say the C word because he tries to mitigate it. And it's like, no, say your words. Say your own words. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was so Dizzy says that FBI got the search warrant, released it through was it TUI?
TUI process, yeah.
So
yeah.
Now listen, am I shocked about what he said? No, of course not. I mean, being doing police work for all those years, I'm not shocked that people would use these kinds of words. But I always say, like, amongst the cops, it's not a big deal because they hear these things and say these things probably all day long. Mm-hmm. But when you're the case investigator and you are now kind of putting yourself in a position to be questioned about your objectiveness and about how you feel about your suspect is damning. I don't care what anybody says, because if you're taking this from, oh, come on, understand something. It's a bad look. It's a bad look.
Yeah, of course. And beyond that, it just pairs with the fact that the investigation was shoddy from the start. So you've got a bad investigation. You've got all these holes. Things weren't found until days later. Paper bags, solo cups, leaf blowers, not a secure crime scene. And then you've got the lead investigator doing this. It completely compromised the entire case. And that's what it is. So even if you were possibly leaning towards her guilt, how can you continue on that path in that thinking as a reasonable human deep down, now knowing what you know and what this guy was doing and what he was saying and how he had already determined this without really having a lot of the facts? He kind of had hearsay, I believe, on the first day anyway.
Well, I mean, in the other issue it comes down to is that I guess no one up there in Massachusetts ever heard of HIPAA laws. I mean,
yeah, that too.
Now,
that's
so if you don't know what HIPAA laws are, right? It's basically you're not supposed to release anybody's medical information to anybody.
Yeah.
Because and if Karen Reed is found either not guilty or this case ends in a hung jury, which is I think where it's headed. That's just my opinion, folks. You can at me all you want. I don't care. But the issue that comes down to is the civil lawsuits coming right after this. And I'll tell you something. Releasing people's medical conditions is going to be front and center on a lot. The whole world knows that she is wearing a colostomy bag and everything else that goes along with it. Yeah. I mean, talk about an invasion of privacy. That's going to be one of the biggest mistakes that we see coming out of those text messages after the fact, right? Yeah. Besides all the other things, people kind of glossed over that also too. Some people did, catch on to the HIPAA rules.
Yeah.
If there's a lawyer in the room, tell us. Because now when I couldn't believe they actually said it in the trial. They made them say this stuff because I said to myself, "My God, you just gave this woman up." I never even knew about that part.
Her MS or just I mean
No,
knew
I heard she had MS, but not the other stuff.
No, same. I had no idea either. Totally same boat. Yeah, it was shocking, and I also was a little bit confused because I guess Karen is supposed to be this outsider. How do they know so much about her? I was confused at that. How do you, this is not your quote unquote circle. It's almost like they did know of her. And I saw a couple people who, again, want to defend Proctor and say, oh, this is a distraction. This has nothing to do with, the fact that Karen is guilty and she did X, Y, Z. And what they are trying to do here is it's just interesting because it's like he does know these people. It's a small town. They do all go out drinking together, especially law enforcement in a small town. So I'm sure he knows of these people. It's just I guess I'm just confused at how Karen all of a sudden fits into this, and they know so much about her. But no, what I was going to say is the text messages when everyone's like, oh, well, he clearly didn't have a filter. So why wouldn't he talk about this cover up? Well, I mean, the cover up wasn't really brought up until a bit later. So, right. We know that it was, I think it was June or something. Why would he in these text messages? The way that he's sending these messages, they're very much planting the seed that she hit him. And it feels a little bit obvious to me that that's what's going on. And I could be just overthinking this. This is not me a conspiracy theorist that they did these texts on purpose. But part of me is like, it kind of seems like they did because of the way, she's gross. She's claiming this, but we know she hit him. Like, it just seemed very rehearsed almost.
She did an interview with Fox 25, I think it is up there, saying with her father has been basically saying that, Dad, I think I hit him.
She said I hit something, and this is what came out. No, but this is what came out when she backed out of John's driveway and she hit his car. That's what she was talking about. But she's also been accused by the anti-Free Karen Read people of deleting ring cam footage from John's driveway or something like that. So I don't know the story.
Which there would be a record of. I mean, you can't delete anything without having a record of it. But the thing is, the police would have to collect all that stuff in order to prove it. So if they're alleging that she deleted something from the Ring camera, they better have gotten all the Ring camera information from Amazon and be able to.
But I don't think they did. And I think they had some kind of reason for it, which was the same reason they didn't have Ring cam footage from the 34 Fairview neighbors. It's just strange. It's like if you had that footage, you could see everything. I don't,
Well, the only thing that could be Amazon, because they own Ring.
Mm-hmm.
They changed their rules about how law enforcement can gain access to a lot of this stuff. They had a thing called a neighborhood program where you could just sign up freely and share your. They killed that, so it's now like you have to go to the homeowner. If they say yes, you can have it. If they say no, you got to get a warrant and everything else that goes along with that.
Yeah.
So
wow.
They made it more difficult. Unfortunately, it's been a great investigative tool surveillance video, but they've kind of made it. Let's just call it this way, more difficult.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you something else too. What did you make of when he stated, and I found this to be a little bit coached as well, maybe just from his meeting with Lally, just slightly, I could be wrong, but when he said he walked in to the Good Samaritan, he saw John, he said, oh, the first thing I noticed was his arm. That's the first thing I noticed. I was like, okay, nobody asked, but okay, you can volunteer that information.
Yeah, no, and we've all seen the pictures of what he looked like. I mean, you missed all the things on his face and the tube down his throat and everything else. That's what you missed.
And his eyeballs. Yeah, that's why I was like, oh, that's okay. I didn't get that. But
I don't know if you saw the stream I did with my buddy Mike the other day when we were actually doing this live.
Okay.
I said that I made a baseball reference. I said Lally just gave him a hanging curveball, the defense attorneys, because he set Proctor up to get destroyed. Yeah. And by not making, first of all, like for instance, he's saying, well, it was unprofessional for me to say these things. He never says the word, I'm sorry I did this. I'm sorry that I said that, Karen. I'm sorry. So what does he say to Yannetti? Yeah, basically, I still hate you.
I know that was a bad look. And here's the other thing, like when I did this comparison on Twitter of Furman and Proctor, again, I was thinking here, I'm not necessarily, and I should have clarified. I should have said, I'm not insinuating he did plant the evidence. I'm just insinuating that, hello, we've got a lead investigator that's showing up to court with his own lawyer. Bad luck, because he's being investigated by the feds for his role in what he's done to completely thwart this investigation. And he hasn't been truthful, in my opinion. And clearly that's been proven so far. But my point is, people were commenting like his family's getting harassed. People are wishing cancer on his children. And I'm like, you guys are giving me so much credit here that I don't know any of this, right? I have not paid attention to anything having to do with his family or any type of harassment that he's getting. However, going back to what we saw the other day, and then I did see on social media, some people were saying that a lot of his family was posting on Facebook and wherever being like, we're so proud of you. We love you and we're proud of you. And I was like, fine, that's your family, but doubling down almost on what he did and what he said, I was like, that's interesting.
Yep. And Helen's asking, are cops bound by HIPAA laws? Everybody's bound by HIPAA laws. You are not allowed to give anybody's medical information out. Remember, you go to the doctors, you sign a form that says, who can we give this information to? And that's the only person. So it's generally like a husband or a wife or significant other or somebody like that with a cell phone and email. Not that you could tell everybody in open court. Not that you could text in all your friend messages. So Helen, yeah, this is a big deal. And I think everybody is now going, yeah, all those damn forms they make me fill out at the medical thing. Every time you go to the doctors, almost it seems as if they make you sign a new HIPAA law, making sure that we're releasing the information directly to the person that we want you to. It's protected. Just like we have the shield laws for people who have been sexually assaulted. You can't release that victims, the police cannot release that victim's name and or the location if it's going to give up who that individual's identity is, because the newspapers will hunt them down and find them.
I mean, but do they mean anything anymore, considering what we just saw? That's pretty terrifying.
If the lawsuit comes out afterwards, you'll see people will straighten up their act next time, that they won't get involved in this, because I'll tell you, I think that's coming. Even if she gets found guilty, I still think that they bring that out in a civil lawsuit against the department,
right,
and against everybody.
And if, let's say, she is found guilty, I don't see a world where she's guilty of murder too. I think it would be. No. Yeah, manslaughter at best or something like that. Just again, based on what I've seen in this trial and what I perceive the jury to also see. But again, I'm not there. I don't know what they're thinking. And yeah. So
well, of course not.
The tough part too. Like, we know all these nuances, we know the background, but hopefully they don't. And they're coming at this just fresh and clean, and they're absorbing all of the alleged corruption by the police or laziness, whatever you want to call it at this point. I'm not even sure. I want to ask you really quick, what do you think about the Sallyport video? Not just the fact that it was inverted, right? That could be, sure, nothing. But the fact that it skipped a lot, and the defense had to ask Buchanan, well, why is it skipping? And he's like, oh, it's motion censored. Again, something the prosecution should have gotten ahead of, because it could be nothing. But in my opinion, it makes them look strange.
Yes. Lolly has done a terrible job getting out in front of anything. As a matter of fact, I think he's only added fuel to the fire. I mean, this guy brings gasoline cans, and it's just, and you're 100% right, Lauren, right? So you're telling me, Guy, you watched this video and you didn't say, what's going on here, right? Let me tell you something. The district attorneys that I've dealt with over the years are sharp as tacks, and they would have looked at me and going, what the hell am I looking at here?
Wow. Yeah. Oh, right.
What the hell am I looking?
So interesting.
I don't know if it's just me. I know Mike, whatever, and I can only tell you experience from what I have with my job, right? I know every police department is not the same, but there were certain things that were drilled into our heads. And the first thing is, when you're in the detective squad, they drill into your head. You need to build a prosecutable case. You can't bring a pig to the district attorney and ask him to put lipstick on it. It doesn't work, right? They will throw your ass right out, because understand something. people think like the prosecutors and the police are all on the same page. We're not. The job of the police are to make arrests and close cases. The job of the prosecutor is to get closure based on a plea deal or go to trial. 99% of the cases don't go to trial. They're all pled out.
Right.
But you have to have a strong enough case to be able to say to the guy, hey, listen, this is what we got, dude.
Yep.
Take the plea, talk to your lawyer, because if not, I'm taking you to trial and we're going to send you away for the rest of your life. And they take it because they look at it. The attorney says, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Kind of like what I think is happening with the Rex Sherman case. Michael Brown could say one thing in public, but in private, he's going, the conversation has to be different.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm not sure, are you aware now that, so Friday is going to be interesting because it's going to be the defense's expert witnesses testifying, not in front of the jury, but to basically make a decision on whether or not they can be admitted as witnesses, because apparently the prosecution is claiming they didn't know about them because these are the feds doing the expert testimony. And I'm just like, see, you think Bev is going to make a decision in favor of letting the defense's experts actually, I don't know. I'm nervous. If she doesn't, that's going to be a very bad look for her. Very, very bad. But I don't see a world.
It just adds more fuel to the fire, right? That she's been, on the wrong side of this from the beginning. But you know what? Judges, we want them to be reasonable and objectionable too. Objectiveness seems to be forgotten in a lot of places. The either side is really incorrigible as far as I'm concerned, and nobody wants to actually listen to the actual facts of the case, because even if you give them a fact, they'll say, well, they come out with a what about this?
Yeah,
right?
What exactly? The whataboutisms, and it's or they're just so morally superior to you because you've said the defense's theory out loud, or you've questioned certain things, and that just means you're crazy and that you're evil. Yeah, you're so evil. So I'm like, I can't.
Well, it gets to a point where you're just kind of like dealing with ridiculousness at one point. You're not going to change anybody's mind. You're not.
Yeah, but they also give us too much credit. Like I said, I'm like, you're giving me too much credit. Like I don't actually live and breathe this. I don't know all of the drama that goes on outside with some. I really don't. So I'm like, I'm just stating my mind. I'm not trying to incite any violence or any, you know what I mean? Plot people against each other.
Well, and here's an example. I saw it in the chat room. I missed it though, but there was somebody who says that he or she has MS themselves, and that those text messages were cruel. And here's another little aspect of that, right? How do we know that somebody on the jury has a family member that has to deal with something similar to this? Understand something. When things like this come out, the chances of somebody having a personal experience with that exact thing is much greater when you're dealing with 12 people plus the 7 on the side. Let me tell you something.
Great point. Wow. Yeah. Great point. Same with when he said the Asian house. That might not be bad to someone, but to someone else that might be considered racist. And there are 2 people on the jury of Asian descent. So they're definitely poking their holes and making these people's characters known.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they're painting not only one person in the police department this, but we know several, including supervisors, that seem to go along with this. And
and are you familiar with the Sandra Birchmore case? Because Buchanan, is very involved in that one, and that one is I believe has even more damning physical evidence there, and that is just heartbreaking.
And many people have tried to get me to turn my attention on that. I've just been caught up in so many other different things. But yes, as soon as you said her name.
You know what? You and I can do an episode on that. I can lead you through it because it's a horrific case of grooming. And again, just bad Boston cops. I mean, and this is Staunton, Massachusetts. So it's right next door. And this girl, Sandra Birchmore, actually lived in Canton. So it's all connected.
And then the other fact is that there's a possibility that when all this comes out, there's going to be a major thing to reopen that investigation too. I don't know anything about the case other than I hear it's bad.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, I'll take you through it. I'll take you through it one day. It's horrible. Sorry, I don't mean to laugh. That was like a nervous laugh, but it's absolutely tragic. And Sandra Birchmore deserves justice.
There you go. And we're going to leave it on that note. Lauren, this has been an hour flew by so quick.
I
don't
know it
I don't.
did. It
So
did.
we're gonna have to do this again, and I definitely want to get it down to that rabbit hole of the Birchmore case because I really know nothing about it.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I'll send you some stuff, okay?
okay, great. You hang out 1 second. We're gonna say
Okay.
goodbye to everybody now. Everybody have a great day. I don't know if we're going to be able to do the stream later on. I have some things that I need to take care of today, but if we do, it will be later on in the afternoon. So everybody, hang in there. Talk to you soon. Bye.